this is Tommy Angel, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve BOWTIE Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card, Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at stevebowtiebryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Hey, this is Jimmy from the Live and in Color with Wolfie D and Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. Would you like to also make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere, and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. And that's how you're hearing this right now. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, it's made the job of producing multiple podcasts so much easier. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And as always, I am joined by my brother from the same father and mother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. What's up, Sheik? How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
Man, just doing the thing over here. You know how it is. Taking care of business or something like that.
You're taking care of business every day. I think that should be a song or something.
I think so. I think maybe Bachman Turner Overdrive should do that. I think sounds like something they would do, you know.
There you go.
So, man, we got a cool show today, right? Tommy Angel, right, dude?
Been there, done that. When you hear those words, that's this guy.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of tell the story. So obviously, you know, it's very cool that we got him, but it was not a direct connection that we normally have. As some of the listeners may or may not know, I've been doing federal grand jury all year down here in North Carolina for the western part of the state. So when it comes down to it, I've been doing this federal grand jury, and, you know, you develop somewhat friendships, even though we really don't know each other with the other jury members. You develop some types of friendships there. And so one of the guys that I've become friends with, Brian, and Brian's a good dude. So on my phone case, I have the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast sticker, and I have my phone turned over and he could see the sticker. And, you know, this has been 8-9 months into it. And he says, "Hey, you like pro wrestling?" And I'm like, "I love pro wrestling." Yeah, you would almost say I have a problem, you know? And so he says, "Well, I know Tommy Angel." And I'm like, "Tommy Angel, wait a second, hold on. You know who Tommy Angel is?" Well, anyway, he says, "Yeah, I know him. I'm buddies with him." And so long story short, he got me in contact with Tommy. By doing this, he sent Tommy a link. Tommy became a member of the group, of the GMBMPW podcast group on Facebook. And so I sent him a message and I said, hey man, how can we get Tommy Angel on a podcast? And this is how we did it. So anyway, thank you so much to Brian for hooking that up. Famous Brian,
Brian, man,
as the pastor calls him. And anyway, so long story short, thanks Brian for that. It was very cool. And we now have Tommy Angel on the episode, man. So very cool.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for it. I know he's going to have just tons to tell us, and we got our notes, but I'm sure that's not enough for his career.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's going to be a little different format than the normal episode. We're definitely going to have to get the name game going a little bit sooner than normal, but, listeners, just stick with us as we go. We definitely appreciate y'all as always. But so to kind of do some business here, one of the things we just did, obviously our previous episode with Derek Neal, y'all turned out for that one. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed having Derek on. Derek's a road warrior, man. He's one of those guys that's out there doing it. And I think he's wrestled probably 20 times now after being on our show. So, I mean, yeah. He's a good dude. And I was really happy with that episode. What did you think, Sheik?
Oh yeah, man. He was a great guy. It's good to hear from somebody that's, still doing it and still making it, man.
Yeah, had some great stories. Always been a big fan of Derek. We clicked on the Reds thing, and after that, we seemed to have a kinship with one another that was really cool. And he was always cool to me in the back, and I feel like he probably thought the same of me. And anyway, I'm glad we got him on the show. But speaking of podcasts, I think you said you watched it already, but if you haven't by now heard enough of me talking and you haven't already watched it or listened to it, I was recently on the Jackson Interaction podcast with Gene Jackson, our good buddy. So that was cool.
Yeah, man, it's a good listen. You need to check it out.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really different to be interviewed, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you put me over a little bit. I appreciate that.
I try, brother. I try. You know how it is. But anyway, it's on the Main Event Comedy YouTube channel. It's also on the Main Event Comedy podcast feed. So if you download it through the normal podcast apps or you want to watch it on YouTube, it's on there. And I had a blast, man. So y'all go check that out. It's on the Jackson Interaction podcast with Gene Jackson. Gene's a great dude and great friend of the show. We had a fun time with him watching Thunder in Paradise. We made him do that. We're horrible, right? So
we'll make him do something else down the road too.
Yeah, I'm thinking bigger things too with him too. We're gonna have some fun with him. I think we'll definitely watch some more movies, and maybe we'll even venture outside of wrestling a little bit on those movies. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, lots of fun with Gene. Had a lot of fun, doing that, and really was just he was a gracious host, and definitely appreciated him having me on the show to be able to put over our shows. So lots of fun with that.
Man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, enough of putting myself over. I think let's get Tommy Angel on the show, and I think we'll have a great conversation. So let's not take away from that. Let's go ahead and get the man on the show right now.
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be right back after these messages with more from the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
That's right, it's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Booty Call and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah.
All right, we are back with our very special guest today. And Jared, I tell you, I'm as excited as ever for this guest to be on the show today. I was like, this gentleman actually is part of my fandom, our fandom of wrestling. He wrestled everyone that we love and some that we didn't like. Jared, I'm stoked about this guy. What about you?
Yeah, man, you talk about been there, done that. That's this guy right here, man.
Yeah. Well, let's not let him wait too long. Let's introduce Mr. Tommy Angel. Tommy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Fellas, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we were stoked, and I tell you, I do so much research and everything to get the right show and to get great questions, and I had to use more than one page, so you should feel very good about that. So, yeah, awesome. So we always start off every episode with the Plastic Sheik's favorite question. Hit it, Sheik.
All right, Tommy. So this is a question that'll kind of let everybody know, like, your influences or who you had, like, you know, maybe good matches with or something like that. But if you had like a Mount Rushmore of wrestlers that either influenced you or you're just a big fan of, or just you love their work, give us like your top 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, that's a tough one to pinpoint down. There's so many. Obviously, the influence for me, just to get me interested in the business. I was in the military at the time, and we'd watch wrestling on the weekends. It was world-class wrestling with the Von Erichs, and we also see Hogan on the other network. So that's what intrigued me about getting in the business. Just those 2 guys, Kerry Von Erich and Hogan. But I was deciding if I want to get out of the military or stay in, and wrestling was it. So I just, through Gene Ligon, another guy from the same era I was, we met him down in Fayetteville at the Cumberland County Arena, and he's like, "Hey, there's a wrestling school getting ready to open up that NWA is going to do." And we connected the dots, we made some calls, and 4 months later we were on television. But the camp was right there in Mooresville, and it was with Nelson Royal and Gene Anderson. We had to try out with 20-some guys. But so working out with Nelson and Gene, those 2 guys obviously influenced me the most, because Gene was a heel, Nelson was a babyface. So you got the best of both worlds training you as the psychology of the business. So I'd say Nelson and Gene for sure. Working wise, Barry Windham and Kurt Hennig, I'd probably had the best matches of my career working with them guys. I worked with them many times in house shows and TV, and just great guys. And they always gave me a lot because they trusted me. So it made me look like $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Mount Rushmore of Mount Rushmores right there. So
well, we haven't heard enough of any of those guys, honestly. But, obviously we've heard a lot of Hogan, but such good Kurt Hennig. I mean, so underrated, I think, in his time after. When he was in the WWF and everything like that, a lot of people remember his later stuff, but he was working for a good while before that too. So
yeah, I remember seeing him in the AWA and just a great heel. He just portrayed that smug, arrogant guy, and fans hated him, and I love it.
Yeah, that's so good. I noticed a lot of second generation stars on that list as well, so that tells you a lot, a guy that did it like you did it, and you're noticing the talents and stuff of these guys. I mean, to me, I don't know, it's a great list, and definitely some of those guys we do not hear or talk about enough. So I was very appreciative. So I always pivot to this question. So now we're back to Tommy Angel. So Tommy, talk about your younger days. Like, where were you born? Talk about maybe like your high school. Did you play sports? Talk about the younger days of Tommy Angel.
Sure. My dad was in the Marine Corps, so I'm a Marine Corps brat. I was born in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, but as a Marine officer, he was transferred a lot. So we lived in the Philippines, California, Northern Virginia. My parents are from Massachusetts, so our summers were spent up in Massachusetts. But I finished high school in Northern Virginia, Woodbridge. Didn't play sports. My dad wouldn't let me because my grades sucked. And then now that I have a son in high school, I understand the reasoning behind it. But I was always a good athlete, and but I wanted to go into the military to get out of my house. My father and I didn't have a really good relationship, so I went in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg for 4 years. Paratroopers jumping out of planes, and I met some guys at the gym that were just huge. I'm like, you guys are. I've been working out for a while. I can't gain any size, and they let me in on the secret. It was all steroids. And, and started doing those. We watched the matches on the weekends. Like, man, that'd be a cool job to get into wrestling. Yeah, we didn't know how. And we'd go down to the Cumberland County Arena there in Fayetteville and watch the matches. And Tom, and I I was already about 265 already, but I had that airborne haircut, short hair, so they just thought we were just some knotheads from the base. And, we're yelling at them, shut up, I'll kick your ass. But finally, Don Cornoodle and Gene Legan, they would always hang out. We were on the baby face side, and they said, if you really wanted to try it, you'll get your ass kicked. I said, I doubt it, but I still want to try.
Yeah.
21 years old and cocky as all get out. So they finally lined us up with a school, and we went and tried out. We had to drive in from Fayetteville to Mooresville and Nelson's Ranch, and behind there was just nothing. Back then in 1986, there was just a lot of hills and pastures that were making us do all kinds of crazy stuff, run up the hills with a guy on your back and just do laps around this field, just trying to wear us out. And then we finally went into this little, like a little warehouse, a little aluminum building where it was an old machine shop, but right in the middle of it was a wrestling ring. We get in there. Ty Stein was there. Gene Anderson's teenage son, Brad. He turned out going to school with us too, but he was a great amateur wrestler. So we go in there and Stallion would try to shoot on you. And I was cock strong. He was trying to pin everybody, and he couldn't pin me. He was getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Gene Anderson says, all right, kids, go over there. We're going to decide who gets to make it to school. There's like 25 guys. We're all standing around and, man, this is crazy. It was a hard-ass workout. It was hot.
Yeah.
But I was the best shape of my life coming out of the military. And we finally named I think 8 of us, and the rest were kicked out. Had to come back and try it another time. So we started class in a couple of weeks from that tryout. And then 4 months later, almost to the day, we were scheduled to go on TV to NWA. And it turns out that the Crockett's, NWA Promotions, and Dusty Rhodes reached out to Nelson, and Gene said, look, we're having television taping. The ratings for television were awful because the job guys were just crushed. And then they were tuning out, and the people that were sponsoring, buying commercials were falling off. So they wanted to create a class of talent that could be competitive on television, but obviously put the guys over. So they worked with us really hard. We kept training after that, but we went out there, and as we got better and better, they allowed us to do a little bit more, but they saw the ratings change and start ticking up, so they were very pleased with that. And then we started getting house shows. But so for basically, I was in the Army. I was either going to go in the Warrant Officer School and be a helicopter pilot or choose wrestling. And I said, I better get more girls if I can get in the wrestling business. So
I like your
motivation. That was my mentality. But looking back, I was like, man, I could have been a pilot and retired already.
Right.
But I had more fun doing my wrestling.
Yeah.
So who was your first match against, Tommy?
Baron Von Raschke.
Oh,
nice.
Well, at that point in his career, he was already
right.
He's a legend in the business. But my 21-year-old self, it's 250 pounds, and we were told by Nelson, put everybody over, be gracious. I didn't complain, but my friends are, Elmer Fudd kicked your ass on TV. Oh. But he's a super guy. But it was my first match, and I had 2 matches that day. And the second one was Rock and Roll Express and a tag team, and those guys were fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt. So, okay, first of all, thank you for your service, for sure.
Yes,
we definitely appreciate that. Second of all, you may be due some money. Have you looked into the Camp Lejeune water lawsuit?
I have. I've got a claim in.
Gotcha.
I was born at the hospital, so they said for that period when I was born in '63 falls in the window of time that they had these issues. So who knows?
Yeah, maybe so. I see that all the time. I was never in the military, but I still get those emails. So I just wanted to, you're already ahead of the game there. So that's awesome. And so, by the way, you come from the military and then you end up growing what I would consider a legendary mullet. I mean, of its time, it had the elements of a flat top, but it also had this power Kentucky waterfall behind it. So I guess, when did you start growing that out? How did your dad react to that, by the way?
Well, when the conversation we had, I went back as I got out of the military, our relationship finally started getting better. I wanted to leave because him and I never got along, and we finally had something in common. So we were talking about the military, and when I told him I was getting out, he said, well, why don't you re-enlist? And I said, well, here's the things I'm looking at. And I told him wrestling. He goes, you're a dumbass if you do that. I said, Dad, they make millions of dollars. They got nice cars.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, don't you get it? It's 15 minutes of fame. So my dad was a buttoned up officer.
Yeah.
He never really got the whole concept, but he supported me once I was in. And my hair, I started growing it, but I came back one time, probably about 6 or 8 months later, my hair in the back, and my mom's like, "Oh my God." My brother's like, "Sweet, that's badass, dude." My dad is shaking his head.
Yeah.
Business up front, party in the rear.
Dude, that's that's such a, never has a haircut meant more to such a time in place, you know. So and I'm not being facetious when I tell you that it is a great mullet. I unfortunately do not have the genetics to grow those types of mullets. I have officially dyed my hair clear, if you understand what that means. And
well,
so,
brother,
yeah.
God punished me for wearing a mullet. I'm bald now. So.
Well, it's how it is, right? But, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so you started in a, you know, you had Baron and you had the Rock and Roll Express, and then I guess you're working for the Crockett's. Did you get to know the Crockett's at all? How were they?
Yeah, because their office was right there in South Boulevard on Briarbrand Avenue. It was near Woodlawn. Woodlawn dead ends into South Boulevard. You make a left, and there used to be Beck Mercedes there, and right across the street was, oddly enough, was Briarbrand Avenue. That's why all the boys drove Mercedes-Benz. But we got to go down to the office, pick up our checks, you know, and everybody's down there. Sandy Scott, we saw, you know, Tony Schiavone and all them. They do some interviews down there, a little temporary studio. They do some cut-ins right there. But being with Nelson and Gene, you know, they always treated us very nice because we were this project. They were developing this young talent, and so we always got treated really well. Jimmy Crockett was very, very was antisocial. He was just a very quiet man, so he never really talked to us. But you know, we were around David and Tony Schiavone and all the others all the time on the crew, the referees, Tommy Young and Teddy Long and Scrappy McGowan and all them. So it was just a really neat time in my life. You know, I'm in my early 20s and, you know, making it. Well, we wanted to be marquee talent, but, you know, we knew our role. You know, we were just making those guys look outstanding.
Yeah. I've recently interviewed George South, and, you know, he's kind of similar to you. And we'll talk more about George in just a minute, but George always talked about understanding the role, and he knew what he needed to do, and he completely owned it. And, you know, I'm a big fan of George, as I am of you, Tommy. So let me ask you this real quick. Dusty Rhodes was the booker at the time. How did you feel like, I mean, I know your position in the company may not have required much from him as it goes, but how did you feel like the guys and everyone felt about Dusty as a booker?
Oh, they when times are good, they loved them.
Yeah.
When times are bad, you know. That's one thing I noticed right away is the battle of egos. And there's a lot of egos there, and you know, why is one guy getting put over and the other guy's not, kind of thing. And, you know, in the military, you're taught to be observant because if you're a non-commissioned officer and you're around a bunch of officers, you can't just shoot your mouth off. So yeah, I was always observing people and their behaviors, and you just see all these egos and stuff. So you saw the tension. So you could see the angst of some of them. Some of them didn't like him because they thought they should get a push. But overall, I mean, he's a very jovial guy. He was fun to be around, and he would even interact with us because like we go to the house matches or even on TV. He'd say, look, you know, like if we knew when you're going to the Road Warriors, you're going to absolutely crush. But if you went out there like with Mike Rotundo or the Steiners, he'd say, all right, kid, we want you to do a couple things out there so we can see what you can do. So I had Scott Steiner was his first match. It was between taping, so it was like a dark match. It was back in the old Turner Studios. It was a pipe and drape. There's probably like 40 people. So he said, just give me about 5 or 6 minutes, Angel. You got more experience, so just kind of, you're the baby face, lead him around. And he was only like 185 pounds, and we didn't have a very good match. And he bloodied my nose with a clothesline. I got pissed off and got drop kicked him in the face trying to get it. So his nose was a little bloody, and Dusty just said, "You guys are the shits." Angel, you know better than that. And then he told Scott Steiner to go get some experience down in Memphis, and you got to get some more size on you. And he took that size thing personally, so he's gassed up.
He
never stopped gassing up. But he's a hell of a talent now.
I always tell people that I can remember when Rick Steiner was the bigger Steiner.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I also remember when Rick was the better promo too, and then Scott became this excellent promo. And I don't know if he's like totally aware of it or if it's just him naturally and it comes out. I can't tell which side of the road he's on, but either way, his promos are masterful too, you know? So where he's talking about, 33% of me can beat 50% of you tied in with 133%, you know, it's just crazy stuff. But so
he just got a wicked sense of humor.
Yeah, he does. All right, so during the end of the show, we normally do a name game with all of our guests, but with your career and the way that it went, we're gonna do some names, and basically the way the name game works is we say a name and you just kind of say like your first thought of them. If a story comes to mind, it's awesome. If not, you can just say skip and we'll go on to the next one or whatever. But when it comes down to it, would you be willing to play the name game with us?
Let's play the name game. All
right, we'll be right back with the very first name game with Tommy Angel. DJ, hit the music. Okay, we're back with Tommy Angel and the name game, like I said, very early in the show. But Jared, start us off with the very first name.
All right, Tommy, this guy, I've heard from so many people how just underrated he is and how masterful he was in the ring. But Brad Armstrong.
Brother, in my heart knew you were going to say that. That guy was class act, a tremendous athlete, completely overlooked as far as talent. They tried to give him a break, and I think they used an excuse not to. He was going to be a arachnoman. But he was just such a wonderful human being and just a great talent. And he was always the one that kept the morale up because he was joking all the time in the locker rooms. I remember one time I had to work him in the Charlotte Coliseum, and I just wanted, when back in the day, you'd show up with your bag, and if someone didn't show up, you get to dress to work. And he was like, Grizzly Smith's like, hey, I'm glad you brought your stuff, Tommy. We're missing a couple guys. You can Brad Armstrong, and there's a bird that got inside the Charlotte Coliseum, and they only used to put a curtain up. They only used half the Coliseum. It was so big, the old Coliseum, and this bird's flying around, and Brad he knew I was just eating all-you-can-eat ribs right down the street. He goes, I said, dude, I don't even want to work. He goes, oh, this is going to be fun. He was going drop down, kick up, watch the elbow, just trying to get me to throw up, and then this bird's flying around. And he goes, what is this bird doing in here? Jesus. Giant goofball. So when he died, man, it broke my heart.
Yeah, no kidding. So the next name on the list is quite possibly my favorite tag team of all time. It's the Midnight Express. Now, this version is with Bobby and Dennis. We'll talk about the other version later.
When I broke into business, Dennis was still tagging with them, and I enjoyed them as much as I did with Stan. But Jimmy Cornette is the one that actually put me on the radar. He came up with that goofy song, Tommy Angel. He'd always whack me with the tennis racket, and I didn't care because everywhere I went, all the towns I went to, people would sing that song. I was like, dude, if I had royalties, I'd give them to you because he put me on the map. But Bobby Eaton and Dennis Conner, Bobby Eaton's probably the tightest worker I ever went with. I would talk like this, but he was crisp. He could jump off that top rope and look like he'd kill you, and he'd barely feel it.
Yeah, I got to know Bobby a little bit in the later years, and honestly, just such a genuine man, really just such a good guy. And he's one of those guys that would take the shirt off his back if you needed it, or he would go into that legendary bag and find you in one, So he was great. Yeah.
All right. This guy, former pro football player, body $1 million, Lex Luger.
Lex Luger. I'm actually still good friends with him and Nikita to this day. They're both in ministry. But when he first got to Charlotte, they were having trouble getting him to, get some of the moves in there preparing for the Baltimore Cup. So they brought him down, Ric Flair and him, to Nelson's camp. And we go inside our building and we work out with Rick. And I was trying to teach him how to do a sunset flip in the rope.
Yeah.
And we're I'm trying to show him he can't get it. He's almost breaking his neck. He finally gets it. But after it's all over, like, Nelson, see, son, you got more talent than the man that just drove up in a Mercedes. I'm like, I know, that doesn't make sense. And Lex will tell you, even back then, he had a huge ego, but he was always nice to me because I worked out with him at that time. But he's even better now. He's come to Jesus Christ. But that dude was stout. I never seen anything like it.
And I personally think he's got the greatest body of all time. A lot of people may say the Ultimate Warrior, people may say Kerry Von Erich, but I feel like Lex Luger, for the way that it looked and the way that it worked on him, I personally think he's probably the number one. And you know, that's not a hard argument to make, you know. But
I think it looked the most, like, it looked
authentic.
It looked possible.
Yeah.
Like, some of these guys don't look possible. Like, I guess with genetics, Lex Luger looked possible, but
yeah, he just had the symmetry like a bodybuilder. Everything tied together nicely. He was taller, so he had longer limbs, and it's just almost like a Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold looked better than Lou Ferrigno, because Lou Ferrigno had shorter limbs, so he just looked thicker. His mass was. When he put me up in that rack, brother, he's stiff. I was like, dude, you know, I gotta pull on me. I'm selling already, dude.
I'll sell them.
Oh, man. Well, the next name, and you brought them up a little bit earlier, but my very favorite tag team of all time from my childhood, and honestly, probably still to this day, my favorite tag team, the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, that's what, when Nelson would travel to shows before we started working, we'd go with him, and he'd tell us to sit off to the side so no one really noticed us. And then on the way back home, whatever time it was in, we'd talk about the matches. And he'd ask us what we observed and what he said we should have picked up on. But he always talked about how much sympathy the babyfaces got. I saw grown women crying, thinking Ricky and Robert were being killed.
Yeah.
So that's the art of the business. Those guys are selling their hearts out, and they could do that. They could make people believe they were dying. And they were stars in the 80s, big time stars. Yeah. They're still good.
I remember that the deal about win a day with the Rock and Roll Express or weekend or whatever, and I felt like it was probably kids and women. You know, it was. Oh, they got those high pitched screams. I remember, and you know, then other teams came out with bigger pops, but theirs were the higher pitched ones for sure. So, but great tag team.
I've never seen any tag team get as much sympathy and emotion than those two.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky's got to be the best seller of all time, or what, top two at least. I don't know.
Easily.
Yeah. Well, the next one is, you brought up Gene earlier, but this one was our Minnesota Wrecking Crew because we were 80s kids. Arn and Ole Anderson.
Yep. Arn is a class act. Ole truly was the best heel. I think it was Greenville where he actually got stabbed. That goes back to the reality of being heels and baby faces and selling your gimmick and not doing that. But he got on the way to the ring or way back. I think on the way back, maybe somebody reached out and cut him on the side of his back or something. And, you know, I wasn't at the show, but Nelson used that example all the time. He said, you want to get enough heat where people want to kill you. But Arn, you know, he was very patient. I had a lot of matches with him individually. Yeah. And even in WWF, their debut up in the WWF, we had ahead of them. Yeah. And he said when they found out they were working me and Bob Emery, one of the guys that broke in with me in the business, he said, I can't tell you how relieved I am, boys, because we've already worked you. He said, we're up here with a lot of different really good tag teams. We're going to come in and mow you down. I said, oh, that's what we're here for, make you look good. I guess, well, I appreciate you. Yeah. And we did.
Yeah, he even brought you up recently on his podcast. I pay attention to his podcast. Probably out of all the Conrad shows, I think I listen to Arn's the most. And he brought you up recently on his podcast. He was putting you over. So that was very cool to hear that.
How about the Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin?
Ronnie Garvin, I just ran across the match that I had with him. When somebody actually Facebooked me and said, hey, look, a little match with Ronnie Garvin. I said, wow. And he was easy to work with. He'd let you, just like Paul Orndorff, if you could work, he'd give you a little bit. If you stalled or just stopped, he would just destroy you. But he's like, hey, kid, I want to, the knockout punch, but I want to do something different this time if you're okay with it. I said, sure, whatever it is. So he stomped me. He picked me up and hit me, stomped me some more. And, you know, I'm back, like he's trying to pick me up. I keep falling back like I'm just completely knocked out. He sits me up. Then he does his big Hand of Stone punch, and I snap my head back, hit the mat, and bang my head. It looked spectacular. He goes, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, that was great.
Was he pretty snug with those stomps?
No, those are great. When he chest slapped you, though, that was for real. He'd shoot, he'd laugh. It hurts.
Since you brought it up, who's got the hardest chop you've ever taken?
Flair,
okay.
Yeah, okay.
I knew he gave him pretty good, but...
Yeah.
Ronnie's a close second. I'll tell you that.
That's awesome.
You have a handprint on your chest for at least a couple of days.
Yeah.
All right. These next guys, we were speaking about louder pops earlier. How about the Road Warriors?
Oh, brother, just love those guys. And thankfully, every time that we had to do TV with them, they're always, we're not going to take it on you, Angel. We'll take it on whoever else it is. We like you. Thank you, Jesus.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
They were very, very easy to talk to in the back. Because he knew they liked Gene Anderson a lot. So he always said, "You were one of Gene's boys, right?" And he'd talk to us, either one of them, Mike or Joe, and they'd always look out for us too. Anybody, Hawker, I think, anybody absentee brother, you let me know. I'll take him out.
Yes, sir. I love that. Oh man, no more authentic than those guys for sure, man. So the very next one, this one's interesting, okay? But I'm doing this mostly because of our listener base and how much they think of this one gentleman and his tag partner too. So the New Breed, and it's specifically Chris Champion and Sean Royal.
Oh yeah, they're fun. I wrestled New Breed several times.
Yeah,
broke in, and they were just fun guys. And Chris Champion, they're just goofballs, but they're both very good athletes. But then when Chris did, they broke up the New Breed. I always liked their ring entrance song. It was great.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, the whole gimmick, the futuristic team and stuff. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, but then Chris had to do some kind of Oriental deal.
Yoshi Kwan. Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I think I never knew what happened to Sean after that. But they're New Breed, man, they're fun. Yeah.
I watched a match recently with you and Yoshi Kwan on YouTube. I've been watching all your matches as much as I can, and it was a good match, man. You had cut your hair at that time. You were wearing the goatee, and but still a great match all around. So,
I cut the mold off because the hairline was receding. I didn't want to look like Bozo the Clown.
Yeah. Well, the next one I've got is specifically, and you've spoken about him earlier about his time in the ministry with Lex, is the Russians, Ivan and Nikita.
Ivan, what a sweetheart. My first house match was with Ivan. It was a Valentine's night in 1987 in Charlotte, the old original Charlotte Coliseum. It was Cricket Arena now, I think it's called, or whatever, right there in Independence Boulevard. And we were doing TV that morning, and they said, "Hey, we got a couple spots. You guys want to work on the show?" I said, "Absolutely." And Rick Rude he drove down there with his car. I was all excited because we're all going to drive back and talk about going to the matches. But they're like, "Hey, who can drive my car back to Charlotte? I'll give you $100." Like, we're all sitting around, and then one of the guys that was driving us, he goes, "Hey, Angel, you want to do it?" I'm like, "I guess." They had this old convertible. It was raining sideways, and the convertible leaks. I'm driving in the rain and just pouring down on my lap the whole time, thinking this is the dumbest thing I ever did to do. Yeah. But I got $100 when I got there. I just put my trunks on, but I did Ivan, 10,000 seat arena, and he led me through the whole match, and he was just masterful, and he'd give me stuff. He was light as a feather.
Yeah.
And then Nikita, working with him, man, the first time I saw him, he was about 286, 290, just jacked. And I was worried about getting a sickle, but he made it look like it was snug, but it didn't hurt. And then over time, he said, man, because he was living in Concord, Kannapolis, and he had a gym up there, Nikita's, and he knew that we worked out with Nelson, so we'd go up there, and he had a little ring too. We'd have to work out with him and some guys, and became real close with him, and he became kind of a mentor to me.
That's awesome.
His first wife was dying of Hodgkin's disease. We were in Danville, Virginia, and he took a call. She was overseas trying some medication. It was experimental that the United States wouldn't allow, so she was able to try it, and he got the call that said it didn't work. And I remember seeing him in the shower by himself just crying, and it just crushed my heart. I was like, man, that sucks. And,
it does. It's horrible.
And so he got out in end of 93, and my time in beginning of the business was beginning of 94. He left as a millionaire, left as a thousandaire.
I always consider him the original Goldberg. You know what I mean? I feel like when I saw Goldberg, I was like, man, that's just a Nikita gimmick, And but is it true? Okay, so you know him. You know him personally. A lot of the guys make cracks about him because they say essentially that he kept that Uncle Ivan kind of thing going all the time. I'm assuming he really did not keep it going all the time, right? I mean,
well, in public he did, because
of course,
back then it was kayfabe. You kayfabe business, and I actually got in trouble for some girl I was dating that happened to know Magnum TA, and got back to him that I was talking too much about the business. I was just trying to impress a girl, and
of course,
I wasn't booked for a while because of it, and rightly so. But I learned my lesson. So back then, it was extremely important to protect the business.
Right.
And he was just living his gimmick. So, but he said he would just make up all this. He wouldn't even speak his gibberish. He goes, I don't know Russian. It's hilarious. Last week I was down in Georgia for they're wrapping up one of their ministry weeks down there at Man Camp. And I went down as an alumni. One of the alumni was a guy from Russia. And he was a really neat guy. I was talking to him. And he said, Dad, first time I meet the Nikita, I start talking Russian. He's like, I don't know what you say, brother. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
He said, that's why I know he's not the real Russian. I said, no, he's not.
That's funny. Great guy, though. Great guy. Ivan was, too. I got to meet both of those gentlemen. Yeah, great men.
All right. How about the Southern boys?
Tracy Smothers? Tracy Smothers, yeah. He was just a wonderful guy. They're just both good guys, excellent workers, They were They cut off the Bullet Bob Armstrong tree where the training they had and the style of wrestling they did. They're just very good.
Oh yeah.
How about Ron Simmons?
Damn.
Damn.
He was. Yeah, I wrestled him a bunch on television.
Yeah.
And he was an enormous guy too, but always took care. He was light, but he was great with the crowd. Just I love Ron. I've seen him in a couple of different those events where he goes sign autographs. He's just full of life. I love him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to kind of take a break from the name game right now, but we'll come right back to it. The one question I want to ask you is, right about this time, you actually work and actually win a match versus the Gladiator #2, which we know as George South. So how was that, first of all? How was working George? How was winning a match? That kind of thing.
Oh, obviously you put over for the first time. You think it's the greatest thing in the world. But I have a long history with George. He's an exceptional human being. So all the stuff that we do with Nelson, all the small shows around, Nelson had his own little outfit, ACW, Atlantic Coast Wrestling. I don't know if you remember that. It was around the same time that we'd gone up to WWF. So George was part of the ACW. George and Stallion had a little outfit called PFW. We made fun of it. We said it stood for Please Wrestle Free, PWF. It was all shows around West Virginia. So I did a lot of stuff with George, and he was in ACW. He put me over a lot. So he's a consummate professional, but he's still wrestling, and you ask any big name guy in the business, they put George over because he's an excellent worker.
Yeah, he really was. So with the name game, we always, like I said, we'll come right back to it. But right about this time, the Crockett's end up purchasing the UWF, aka Mid-South, whatever you want to call it. So how was it kind of felt? Because obviously now, in looking back, and even JR has admitted that they were buying basically a lame duck. They could have waited for the company to close, and then they could have picked up those guys and not bought that company. But how was that? Was that even something you even thought about, or how was that thought of at that time?
Well, we always had Gene and Nelson giving us what the truth was, what was going on, and bad business decisions and all that stuff. And he just told us to keep our minds focused on our part in the business and our careers, and just try to keep moving forward. So I know because we did so well with Crockett, the talent, the ratings went up. Vince McMahon took a great deal of interest in us.
Yeah,
he invited us to come do television. Nelson said, "Hey, here's an opportunity, but if you take it, you probably burn a bridge with Crockett." And like, and I've always wanted to work in WWF, so
of course,
George and all of us went up there, and it was just a night and day difference, pay wise, experience wise, being around top talents that I watched on TV. But it's probably after about a few years with Crockett. But we went up there, and during that time while we were gone, I went to WCW. But when we first walked in, George would say, it was me, George, and a couple other guys walk in, and knowing that Jim Crockett we believed he didn't know our name. We walked in, we see Vince McMahon, like, there's the man. Oh, sure, what do we do? And he's like, hey, George. Hey, Tommy. Hey, David. How you guys doing? We're so glad you came up. You guys need anything? We're like, no. And he walked out. I was like, he knows our name. That's crazy. And we told Nelson that. He goes, Vince McMahon doesn't do anything happenstance. He researches. He knows you guys' talent. He's watched you on the shows that you guys work with Crockett. He wanted you here for purpose to take their television up to the next level. So it was very made us feel good about ourselves. But man, they're so much better. They fed us. They had buffets all day for TVs. You 4 weeks in the can. Crockett, he'd send one guy down to the corner and see if he could convenience store and see if he could get a bunch of those frozen burritos or whatever. But McMahon pays it per diem and much higher pay on TV, and all you can eat is like this best.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, what did you feel like was like the difference in the locker rooms?
Just with the same guys, the same kind of atmosphere, just a lot of camaraderie. Everybody got along at just different places, It was just the difference was the way they handled the business of it. That it was the same, but it wasn't like McMahon had his agents. You'd have an area where the television was on, you'd watch it, and the next stage, Gorilla Monsoon was at. He had TV, but he was one of key to the ring, so they were very more precise about it. When we went up there, they had 4 tractor trailers, WWF stick, logoed all up, and it was like a 3-ring circus. They had equipment, guys, and they had staff galore. Where NWA, that a guy named Bunk driving a little old truck and pulled the ring out, set it up. So it was just night and day as far as the wow factor.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to bite the hand that fed me because we eventually went back to WCW.
Right. Yeah. And you did. And, you did start working. I think it was June 21st of 88 that you started working in the WWF from my research that I could find. But, of course, you do go back and forth. And that must be a luxury as far as that. Was that fairly common for guys? Or was there a set group of guys that could do that? Or was that just...
Yeah, I think it was just the group that Nelson, because they did several camps. And there was like 2 or 3 from my class and a couple from the other ones. They'd be able to go back and forth because just being the longer we were in the business, better we were as a craft, and just the trust we had with all the top guys. So they were just like, I'm pretty sure they said, we want him and him. My real break came in WWF when Lanny Poffo got hurt. We were doing TV, and we were getting ready to fly back home, and the gorilla walks up and goes, Angel, you talk to him. I'm looking at my boys, I'm like, man, I don't think I screwed up today. No, I don't know. I know. And I go talk to him. He goes, hey, Lanny Poffo's hurt. He hurt his back. He's out for 2 weeks. Can you work? I'm like, oh, brother, can I work? Just tell me where I need to be. And they lined it up, man. I had airline tickets. They set up per diem, and I was traveling around with Boss Man, Henning, and Rick Rude. It was just a blast. I wrestled in the up in Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens against Iron Mike Sharp, the WWF house show, and this bazillion people. And it was just a good, I think it was TV taping or something, because it's still on YouTube somewhere. But Coco Beware, just having fun with these guys. And I had a room with Boss Man through most of it. Ray Traylor, I knew him from when he was in NWA, and that guy, what a sweetheart he was. Yeah,
speak on him. I would love to hear more about Ray.
He just same thing. He got in as a job guy level and said, hey, Tommy, it might happen to you. I was just sitting there one day and say, hey, we got a gimmick for you, boy. You want to try it? I said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And they made a big Boss Man, but he was limber as a cat. He could sit in a hotel room and lift his leg up like a karate kick and touch the ceiling.
Wow.
There ain't no way you can do that. That's impossible for that. What I did is, I'm just flexible, Tommy.
I remember when he was Ray Traylor and he was just wearing like a singlet, almost like a King Kong Bundy type deal. And he's Ray Traylor, and and then he's Big Bubba Rogers all of a sudden. And, as a kid, we're paying attention to this stuff and we're like, okay, this guy's getting his break, and then of course he ends up the Big Boss Man, and that is history. But man, I just remember, we loved all the guys. It didn't matter who won or lost in a sense. We just enjoyed all the wrestlers. But so, like I said, you are working in the WWF some now. So we're going to go back to the name game real quick. And Jared, go ahead with the first name.
All right. So with this guy, we're going to have a confirmation on this. Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Did you ever lose your hair to Brutus?
My very first match in WWF was to Brutus the Barber.
Nice.
He came up to me, and then the makeup artist comes up and says, ask me questions about my mullet, and I'm thinking, she thinks I'm pretty hot or something. And she's just pulling my mullet and stuff like that. She goes, yeah, you do. And she walked off. And I'm like, I don't know what that's all about. But then they came and said, hey, Angel, you're going to be working barber. Do you have a problem if you cut your hair? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to cut my hair. I just grew this out.
Right.
And they're like, well, they'll just cut a little bit off. And makeup artist wanted to say, she could fix it if it trim it up. I'm like, okay. And so we're going to give you extra money for that one. They told me how much extra money. I'm like, well, hell yes, you can cut my hair. So we go out and do the whole match, and you can hear, if you're watching on TV, and I think it's McMahon and Jesse Ventura. Mr. Angel, our first look at him, Mr. Angel here in WWF, he's got quite a bit of hair on his head, making fun like I'm getting cut off, and goes through the match and does his gimmick. He always gets himself way too excited, and he brought out the shears, and he cuts just a little bit off and lays me back. I'm thinking, oh God, that's perfect. Didn't feel like he cut much. And then I feel him pick me back up, and he starts snipping away. I'm like, what the? But I'm supposed to be out cold. And I just, after watching the match to the back after we did, I'm like, oh my God, my hair's all gapped up. And she goes, sorry, honey, if you want it even, I'm going to have to cut most of it off. I'm like, God almighty. So the next hour taping is the British Bulldogs. So we did several weeks in a row shows. Yeah. So I go out there, and next, literally 30 minutes later with short hair, but it's supposed to be the following week's TV. Yeah. I was so humiliated. My mullet is gone.
Oh man. Well, yeah, you brought them up. Talk about the Bulldogs. That's my, so the Rock and Roll, the Midnights are in my top Mount Rushmore of tag teams. But as far as it goes, the Bulldogs are too. How was it working with those guys?
Man, they were crisp. They were strong. They were very good at what they did. They played some nasty ribs on people, but that same day, I got my extra money for getting my hair cut, but they went to give me a suplex off the top rope. Nelson taught us, you don't want anybody to have to throw you, right. Give your weight to it. So I jumped right when they were suplexing me, and you can almost see like you almost let go, almost lost me in the air, and it goes, holy, you could hear the commentators like, oh man, how many feet in the air was that guy? Jesus. I come back and they're just $100 bills. That was the best bump we've seen all day, kid. Good job. So I'm thinking, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And, another guy got clotheslined by Jake the Snake out of the ring, and he got money. I was like, man, we're making extra cash just for, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. This is fat. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
How about One Man Gang?
One Man Gang. I've wrestled him several times, and man, there's one match. I was 6'1" and about 255, and I looked like a little kid standing next to me. It's huge. Yeah. And they said, that's his gimmick. You're not gonna be able to do much. Throw some punches, kicks, whatever, but he's gonna shut you down. So I did it. Yeah. And God, what was his manager's name? The black dude, Slick. He was a crack up. I love that guy, but I knew it was going to be like a 2 or 3 minute match, and but he was very nice. You okay? Did I hurt you? I'm like, you did.
Yeah. From stuff I've seen of him, he seems like genuinely one of the nicest people. Like, and he just looks like such a monster because he's so big, but he seems like a genuinely nice guy.
That's crazy. Definitely.
Yeah. How about Rick Rude?
Rick Rude. Yeah, he was, man, that dude was strong as an ox. But every time I worked him, he was very crisp, but just a showman, he tried to laugh. But he got me one time a DDT on a chair, and no one knew nothing about concussions back that era, but I'm pretty sure I had one after that one. I was like, what the? Yeah. Well, I was trying to remember where I was and get in the back, and the boys were with me and said, dude, how come it took you so long to get in the locker? And listen, I didn't know what time we dude. So they're like, stop it and make them for real.
Yeah, where am I? So he rocked you pretty good, huh? That's
yeah. But he was always fun to hang out with. You remember one time that trip we went to WWF in Toronto? We walk in the bar and there's a bunch of clowns making fun of him. And he smoked cigarettes, which seemed odd to me, as athletic as Rick was. But he walked in, he's smoking, and the guys are making, oh, look, you think you're so cool because of all them big muscles. And it's me, Boss Man Henning, and him, and they're sitting at the bar stools with their back to the bar. And Rick Rude sitting right in front of him. He takes a big drag on a cigarette and just looking at it and say, where, and he blew smoke in his face real hard. And the guy blinked, and he just grabbed him by the throat with one hand and choked him out. I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
Big Howard Johnson's bar. That was the place to go up there. And the bouncer's like, "Did you guys buy even?" And Rick's like, "I didn't get a drink yet." "Okay, get a drink." Whatever he wants to do.
That's incredible. So the next guy on the list, so our former guest and good friend of the show, Mr. Ben Jordan, he got to work the Money Incorporated version with this gentleman, but you actually worked the $1 Million Man. Now, I got to ask, he was upset because at the end he got pinned but did not get the $100 stuffed in his mouth. Let me ask, were you able to take the pin from Ted?
Oh, yeah. And then you don't get to keep the money.
Oh, of course. I'm sure you didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
But the mud match I had with him, as it was the whole, he did a good setup. He was going to shoot me in the corner, and he turned his back on me, and I climbed up the rope and did a cross body block off the top, but he ducked, and I landed. And then the commentators thought it was amazing because I took a great bump. And they're like, "Man, it was like he's come a crash landing or something." It was hilarious, but Ted even loved it. But he was so easy to work.
Yeah, I've heard he's one of the best for sure. So then the next name on the list, and you've worked what I consider the original of this team, but I can't deny that, Crusher basically taking one of the former Russians and putting him with the Masked Superstar to make Demolition has to be a great tag team. Tell me, I guess, one thing about Demolition, talk about them, but also maybe how they compared to the Road Warriors.
Yeah, Bill Eadie is great to work with, and then gosh, the other cat, what's his name? Let's see his face.
Barry Dorso. Yeah.
Barry Dorso, yeah. He was there. And then Barry, Nikita, Rick, Kurt Hennig, and all them guys are all from the Minnesota area. They all knew each other.
Yeah.
Really good friends, Road Warriors as well. And but Barry was, as a team, but Bill Eadie was the more experienced guy who pretty much laid out the match for him. But yeah, Road Warriors were, it's like comparing apples and oranges. They're just two different types.
Right.
Road Warriors were just the brutals. We're going to smash your face in with a Demolition. They were, I don't know if they're more agile, more wrestling moves, but they were definitely, they were over too. Road Warriors, but Edie and Barry were great to work with as well.
Do you feel like they maybe took care of you a little more than the Road Warriors did, or was it? Because you said the Road Warriors.
So overall, the Road Warriors matches were quick.
Shock and awe.
With Demolition, with WWF, it was be some more time in a match, like a tag in and tag out. So yeah, they definitely took care of you for sure. You would never get hurt working those guys.
Yeah.
How about looks like you worked Iron Mike Sharp 5 times.
We always yelled.
Yeah. 5 times in a row, it looked like too. Yeah. Actually, yeah.
He was something else. He was a big dude, just large individual. Because one of the matches, I think it was the one from Maple Leaf Gardens, I had to go behind him, put a full Nelson on, and I couldn't get my hands locked behind. It's that wide back and shoulders. And I think Rene Goulet or somebody was in the commentators. I can't even lock his fingers. But he'd always work out and put baby oil all over, so he just slippery as all get out when you're in the ring with him. It's nasty. You have to shower when you're working with him because you just cover baby oil. Yeah. But that was his thing. And he'd take a shower and put a fresh new coat of baby oil on him, put him on the airplane with it. It's gross.
Would it burn your eyes when you worked with him?
I imagine if it got in your eyes, it would. It never mind. Thank goodness.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's just slippery, but you trying to bing, bang, bing, tackle drop down, watch the toss and slide right through his arms.
I've heard that he was a bit of a germaphobe or a clean freak. And Jake the Snake would tell a story about how he would do something to kind of shake his hand or touch him or something, and he would feel like he was dirty again and need to go take another shower as a rib on him.
That's a great segue if you don't mind.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Mike Sharp, the very first WWF show in the Palace in Auburn Hills. It's since closed down, but I was working Iron Mike Sharp first match, and I go back to the dressing room. Heels are always on the opposite side of the building, and but somehow they're all in the back room in the concourse with everybody together. I get a shower going. I said, well, I'm the first match. Mike Mike's not over here. Where's the shower going? I come around the corner with a towel, and all of a sudden I see this python was in the water, just swimming.
Oh my God!
Turns out he wanted to put the snake in here for exercise. I'm slipped, barefoot. I'm now dropping my towel naked. I'm scratching, trying to get off the wet floor. I'm soaking wet around the concourse. And the security guard's looking at me and goes, "What's wrong with you, brother?" I said, "That's a snake in there, dude." Jake said, "Quit shooting my snake." I'm like, "What the? I'm scared." Just relax. He's been in a bag all day and put some warm water, let him swim. I'm like, it'd be nice if he'd just give us a heads up before.
Yeah.
It freaked me out. But then the guy finally, I'm standing there, he goes, "You're naked, right, dude?" I'm like, so I'm back in the locker room all shamed. But yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah, I could care less that I'm naked right now. I don't want to be near that.
Join me, Gene Jackson, for the Jackson Interaction Podcast, where I'll be doing one-on-one interviews with people from the world of professional wrestling, as well as stand-up comedy. You can get them anywhere podcasts are available in both video and audio form, but you can find them all at GeneJacksonPod.com.
Hey, it's the Heat Miser Scotty Blaze, and I'm inviting all of y'all to join me on my brand new podcast, Turning Up the Heat with the Heat Miser Scotty Blaze. So what are you waiting for? Come on over and join me. I'll be covering all the events of the day, global, national, pop culture, movies, gaming, whatever sounds interesting, but I'll also be playing some awesome skating shuffle music from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, anything that has a good beat, I'm going to be playing it. You can rest assured. Come on over, TUTHradio.com. The podcast is on every major podcast platform. See you then.
So you do end up working your way back to Crockett, and you go back and one of the guys that you worked there that is honestly I feel like one of my favorites because his manager was great. I loved Gary Hart, but also Al Perez. Talk about working him, and maybe if you have any stories about Gary Hart.
Yeah, he was to me just one of the best, cleanest workers there was. I mean, he was good, great body,
yeah.
Personality, and Gary Hart. You try not to crack up when you're working a match.
Abdullah the Butcher.
Yeah.
Muta. Yeah. I loved Gary. And in fact, when I was in the business for my little part, I would say my biggest influence and the person I probably tried to rip off the most was Gary Hart. And, translating that to a 2010 audience, it's a little different. You can't do all the babies and stuff like that he would say in his, "Yeah, let me tell you something, baby." You can't really do that in a promo in the 2010s, but I still tried. Yeah. So, the one thing that I would ask is, like when you went to the WWF and you had that time there, was there ever discussions about like, hey, there may be more for you if you stay more? I know you went back, don't get me wrong, but what I mean by that is, was there ever any talk of maybe, pushing you a little further at that time? Or was it solely, hey, you're doing a job and that's all it was?
No, when Lanny got hurt and it was like a 2-week tour, and they came off it and they said, "Hey, kid, you did great. We want to continue to use you and develop you." And that's kind of where I left it. But Nelson, at the same time, was starting up the Atlantic Coast Wrestling.
Yeah.
It was just a regional television based out of Mooresville. And he said, "Look, I got a problem if I'm going to put you over on my TV if you guys are still going up to WWF and doing jobs." And here I was on the verge of, getting my foot completely in the door. And then do I want to be put over on ECW and not being loyal to Nelson? So I backed off as some of the bookings I had in WWF, and he put me over in ACW, but went back to WWF, but it just never got beyond that. And then that's probably closer to when I was trying to figure out if I really wanted to stay in the business any longer.
Yeah. Well, and again, I bring him up again because, like I said, he's a good friend of mine. Ben Jordan talks about this. He talks about how, he's worked all these great guys, all these big names, had this awesome time being an underneath guy for different companies and the talent he got to work. But going back to the Outlaws, he enjoyed working on the Outlaws more because you got more of a story to tell. You got that tit for tat. Not that he needed to go over, but you were able to tell more of a story there. Do you know what I mean? Is that kind of how you were feeling also?
Yeah, with the Atlantic Coast Wrestling, you actually get to, it's all work you get to, you'll be over, you're carrying a strap. You're learning that part of the business. Because honestly, we didn't really work any independent shows for probably the first 4 or 5 years. So it was kind of a foreign thing for me when I went from working with all the main guys to these little shows. That's when we were trying to just make some extra money and keep in the ring. And just trying to evaluate. The biggest thing about working independents for me is I don't want to get hurt working somebody that really wasn't a bit of a worker. Right. Because if you can't work, you don't make money. And that was the biggest thing they stressed on us as they brought us into the business. So you don't want to hurt anybody because you have a reputation to hurt people. You're obviously not going to get booked. So taking care of the guy you work with was number one. And but you always want to be the guy that gets over. And, how many matches do you actually win?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So Tommy, talk about some of your favorite tag team partners throughout your career.
Well, the one that I had with the Atlantic Coast Wrestling was Tommy Seabolt. TNT. Very similar styles. And personally, we clicked automatically. He was a student of Nelson's as well, but he's a former police officer in Greensboro, and I'm obviously being former military. We were wired the same way, but he was just a great athlete, a great guy. And so I was paired with Ricky Nelson at first. Nelson thought that'd be a good pair, but it didn't seem like it was taking off. And he finally just got mad one show and put me with Tommy. We went up there and the fans loved it. And me and Tommy had more continuity together as far as tagging in and out and similar styles. Not that Ricky was a great worker too, but it just clicked for me and Tommy. And then he said, "I want to call you guys TNT, Tommy and Tommy." I said, "Whatever gets us booked, brother." Yeah, Tommy passed away about a year ago. Man, that was heartbreaking. He had died of a massive stroke.
Oh man, sorry to hear that. Yeah. Speaking of tag teams, we did talk about it a little bit earlier, but who, in your opinion, which was the better Midnight Express? If you had a gun to your head and you didn't get it away from you and you were stuck and you had to say, hey, Bobby and Dennis or Bobby and Stan, in your opinion, who is the better Midnight Express?
And not taking anything away from anybody. They're all talented individuals, but Stan and Bobby, for me, okay. Bobby Angel was the best. And Dennis, it was a weird, one Saturday morning, Dennis wasn't there, and they're like, well, there's no Midnight Express. And you hear everybody talking in the corners, quietly, where'd you go? Blah, blah, blah. And then next week they brought in Stan, and he obviously already had credibility, but he was the guy that, Bobby was the worker, but Stan was Dennis was very laid back too, so Stan was the charisma and everything else, and he's hilarious to be around. We you think about it, the Midnight Express, to me, it was really like Stan came in and there was no void whatsoever. It was basically, if anything, it elevated it a little bit. I think it certainly elevated it, as far as looks wise. And I'm not saying that specifically as I'm in love with Stan Lane, but what I mean by that is I feel like they upgraded in that department. Again, not taking anything away from Dennis Condrey, but I just was curious about your thoughts on the differences and maybe which was better or overall. So definitely appreciate that.
So, and you've talked about wrestlers being, just so crisp and so easy to work with, and then some were a little snugger and everything like that. Did you ever have concerns about anybody you were working with, like being like that you'd worked them before, and man, they were rough to work with, like you were almost injury wise?
Kevin Nash. I love Kevin. He's a great guy, but brother, it was like a telephone pole sometimes. Yeah. And he'd be like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you that hard." I'm like, kind of was. Looking for my dentures. But he was at that point, he was pretty new to the business because they brought him in. But as far as just hurts you all the time, Sid Vicious. He would just overcompensate on this. He'd just like lay it in on you. Yeah. And I like Sid, and then the worst would probably be Van Vader because he actually hurt some people. Yeah. He would just keep doing it. But overall, just the other Russian guy, like Ali, Al Snow is his name. No, it wasn't Al Snow. Vladimir with the Russians. I know who you're talking about. Vladimir Petrov. Petrov. Yeah. He never had a clue. It hurt all the time. And they tried to revive, and Nikita were trying to smarten him up. He was just brutal.
Yeah.
But Kevin was just a fun kind of like, ow, I got you.
Yeah.
I remember one time Sid he had an ambulance gurney outside the TV taping at Peachtree Center, and I knew he was going to throw it at me. I'd just go in the ring, jump out of the ring, go in the ring, chase me around the ring, and finally get pissed off and slam me down and pin me, but he was going to try to throw that thing on me. I was like, I'm not going to let you do it, dude.
Yeah.
Get in the ring, Angel. Crazy.
Have you seen that match that the guy, I can't remember their names, but it was like Avalanche and Mike Bell or somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And Sid and Spivey. And we'll talk about Spivey, I promise. He's coming up. But Sid and Spivey beat the dog out of this guy, and he just will not sell. Do you remember? Have you seen that?
Yeah. I remember.
Did you know who that guy was by chance, or was he just like a one-timer?
Yeah, I don't recall knowing who he was other than that poor bastard.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Great thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. They shit can Avalanche, throw him out of the ring, and they're just like focusing in on that one guy. And like I said, we'll talk Spivey in just a second, but I do not want to fight Sid. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to fight Sid, but I 1000% do not want to fight Dan Spivey. That is just, yeah.
I got to tag with him in Japan over in Japan.
I'm excited.
He's awesome. He's a big dude too, because they made him and Sid were like the Twin Towers.
Yeah. Well, the other Twin Tower, I want to ask you about him because you did work with The Undertaker early on too. Talk about working with The Undertaker.
Yeah, he was great. I was actually his first television match in WWF. That was one of the things that it's a compliment to me. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I had part of Arn and Tully's match and his, because you see the match that says, "This is our first look at The Undertaker here on the WWF." And if you see him, he's got no tat. This is no tat mark when he comes out. But he was agile as a cat. I was watching workout before the TV taping started. He could walk around the top rope with nothing, balance himself, just walk.
The Don Jardine, yeah.
And so we talked about the match, what he was going to do, and he did the whole coffee grounds thing. That's what this first time he says, it's because they symbolize, ashes, ashes, dust to dust. We're going to bury you, and it's going up my nose. I'm trying to sneeze, and like you can see me twitching on the camera's focusing. I'm supposed to be like completely knocked out cold, and like I'm trying not to sneeze and going, dear God, the coffee grounds are up my nose.
Oh my God, that's awesome. We're going to find that.
Percy Pringle doing his gimmick.
Undertaker, Tommy Angel. Yeah, that's great.
My name for him because he said, Mr. Angel, is there an ominous prophecy here? Is he going to die?
It is crazy, the Undertaker versus an angel. I love it. Yeah.
Talk to us about this guy. We've talked about it before. If he was still alive, we think he could be doing great things in the business. But hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert.
Oh, gosh, yeah. What a guy. He was always one, even just working television, he would always give me a lot of stuff. He always worked talking to us young guys, but just talented, great heel, very giving. He was one of those that did not have an ego, and he was all about the business, being successful, good versus evil, and just complimentary. I mean, he was class act.
Yeah, I just feel like he was meant for more. You know what I'm saying? Had he not passed away, I know sometimes he booked places that people were not always crazy about him sometimes, but that when you wear multiple hats, I mean, Dusty Rhodes dealt with the same thing, but I think Eddie was definitely a student of Jerry Lawler. You could tell he had a bit of Lawler in him, but when it comes down to it, his mind was the strength of him. I think he was I know there's been so many people that we've lost, but one of the guys I think definitely has got to be Eddie Gilbert as far as what he could have offered to the business outside of it, So,
he'd definitely still be over.
Yeah. So one guy you worked, and a buddy of mine, George Weingroff, had him on a show at one time, and he was talking about, how Magnum TA probably paid the most money to get in the business. I think this guy charged him $25,000. Now, the number sometimes fluctuates. I've heard Magnum tell 10 or something to that effect, but he never got any training from him, or if he did, it was very little. And this guy always looked very authentic in the ring, was Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer.
Yeah, I don't know much about that backstory. All I can tell you is that Magnum was the real deal. And if he would never got hurt, he was the next player. He was ready to go. And
he would have been
talent with the body, with the charisma, with the interviews, sex appeal. Yeah. So that was a hard one, but Buzz Sawyer was not well received by a lot of the boys. He didn't have.
I can imagine. Yeah. How was he to work with? Was he pretty safe, or?
He was stiff. I mean, I'll never say I never would care for anybody, but he just wasn't one of the guys that was going like, hey man, you want to get a beer after the match? Sure.
Yeah. And this story was not told as a way to make Magnum look bad. We love Magnum.
Well, I understand completely. Yeah. Just to know Magnum and
he's the boss.
And to see
it's sad.
Tragic accident.
He's the ultimate what if. And I mean, the what if is ultimately that he would have had several NWA title reigns, and probably I could have easily seen him coming in and taking some WWF title reigns as well. I feel like there were big things for him, as a guy, as a worker, as a top guy. And also we had him on the show. Great interview, very humble man, very just such a really good guy. And he was very gracious to us very early on, and it was probably one of our first shows that I was nervous about. This guy was a legend, is a legend. I'm sorry, this guy is a legend. And to talk to him, and we really didn't get into the car accident thing that much because honestly, it's been brought up so many times. But I guess how you were there around that time, how was everything when that happened?
It was I was brand new to the business, and it was like, it'd be like a Super Bowl team losing their quarterback. I mean, everybody was in the business just heartbroken. Like, what are we going to do? Because for a brief period, they didn't think he was going to live, and then he did. And then when they found out the prognosis, it was just a lot of sorrow. So the guys carried themselves and said, "Look, we're going to keep pushing forward. We're praying for a miracle. This guy's going to come back." And Nelson said, it's nothing personal. The show must go on, and next guy's got to stand up. But it's just heart-wrenching because the sky was the limit for him.
Yeah. Well, it's just like in any job, unless you own your own business and you're a self-employed man, the very next day at your job, they're going to start looking for your replacement. And as tragic as that was, it was still, like you said, the show must go on. Now, in a weird sense, Nikita profited from Magnum's loss, and he became the next babyface, and then ultimately Sting and other guys. But Nikita actually filled that role, which, had you asked me a year before, would Nikita be somebody that I would cheer for as a kid, I would have never said yes to that. I would have said, no way, Nikita's the ultimate villain, But when it came down to it, he filled that role with Dusty, and it was a crazy time. But, like I said, this is the Tommy Angel episode. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that Magnum accident there.
Yeah, no worries, because it's all interrelated. I mean, I was there amongst it all, and that shows you Dusty's creative genius. I mean, he could take a heel like Nikita and make him a babyface.
Yeah, exactly.
So it looks like 1991 you worked Stunning Steve Austin.
Stunning Steve, I sure did.
Yeah, several times.
I love that guy. I mean, he's one of the guys, if you get like 10 guys that influenced you, I mean, that guy's motor was always full blast. Yeah. Stunning Steve or Stone Cold, when he was in the ring, he was going, and he's hilarious. He'd have you cracking up in the match. I'm like, dude, shut up. look at the girl on the fourth row and her giant tits. Look at her, Angel. You know what?
That's incredible. Yeah.
Everybody knew that he was going to be the next star because he came in from Texas and he was talking about, I was eating raw potatoes and drinking water, driving a Hyundai, just trying to, stay alive.
In Memphis. Yeah, that was in Memphis. And yeah, it's so funny. I remember a story he told about, it was either Dutch or him that said it. Jeff Jarrett came in, and of course, Jeff's the promoter's son with the Corvette and all this nice stuff. And he says, now, none of you boys are on them steroids, are you? And Steve or Dutch, one of them said, hell, Jeff, we're not even on food. And
He's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, he's just, I guess that you answered it, but you could see that he was destined for big things, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. And then the greatest quote I ever heard, and I live by it today, is when we were traveling and I was just eating Doritos or whatever. It's like, I said, dude, I thought you were on your health. Bad calories, bad no calories, Angel.
Yeah.
You got two guys that I think by WCW letting them go, they actually became bigger stars. It pushed them to become bigger stars with Mark Calloway and The Undertaker and Stunning Steve becoming Stone Cold. I think WCW is sliding them and not pushing them more actually motivated them to go further in their career.
Oh, yeah. And this shows you that Vince was the powerhouse promoter.
Right.
He could turn it just the quality of showmanship, and everybody like Hogan was considered bigger than Flair, even though Flair was like the first guy to make $1 million. But Hogan went on to have like 11 movie deal with Disney, and I mean it was just he had people on all the late night talk shows, movie stars. So McMahon is next level. But yeah, those blessed for Steve. I'm happy that he got success, and Mark as well. I mean, God bless him.
Yeah. So in 91, you've talked about this a little bit already, but we'll kind of in the chronological theme of this show here. In 91, you started working for South Atlantic Pro Wrestling. And from my research, it showed that Paul Jones and Frank Dusek were the owners. Is that true?
Yeah. And there was another guy that was more the majority owner. Those two were silent, but he was in the local gym. I think he was in real estate, Mike something, but they ended up robbing him blind, just putting themselves over. But that was when Ken Shamrock, Vince Torelli was there. Me and Tommy was there first. I came in and became TNT, but Shamrock came in before all that, and he was living in Mooresville. His stepfather brought him in, and he was working out with us every day.
Was Maestro there as well? Robbie Eagle, was he around that time?
Mm-hmm.
George.
But I always remember, working out with Ken at the local gym, and then come up in the ring and working out with him. And he's like, I'm gonna go to the UFC. I'm like, good. They pay more money. I'm like, I'm good. I said, they really punch you in the face. Oh no, they pay more. I'm like, I'm good. I like my teeth in my mouth.
Did you? I mean, let's just go that way. Did you feel like there was something you could have done there, or were you just discussing that with him? Was that something that maybe?
He was actively talking about, you guys could come, you can make a lot of money, because he came, their first UFC match was in Charlotte at the Grady Cole Center, and he wrestled Hoist Gracie. And Gary Busey showed up with one of my ex-girlfriends, a stripper.
Wow.
Like, you're kissing mine, hey!
Oh my God.
That's great.
I just told him, I said, man, I like wrestling because it's the work. You still get beat up, but I'm not at the UFC. And another friend of mine went in there, and he was it was like two different territories or whatever back then. He was getting crushed, and poor kid now he's punch drunk. He talks.
Yeah, he seems to be punch drunk. Yeah.
I mean, the CTE is real, so that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think he was even promoting a bare knuckle fighting for a while recently, and he was talking about how that's actually better than UFC because you get knocked out quicker. So it's like, okay, there's less head trauma that happens in the bare knuckle, and it was not necessarily clicking with me, but maybe it makes sense. I don't know, but yeah,
that's like saying when you get shot with a shotgun, you get killed with a 22 is not so bad. You still get shot.
Yeah, exactly. You're still getting shot. Yeah. So you did end up going, and we've talked about your tag team partner TNT with Tommy Seabolt and that, and getting to work the independents, gave you some more storyline and a little more food on the plate. But when it comes down to it, you ended up actually working for Smoky Mountain for just a little bit. So first off, how did you get there? And then second, did it remind you of Crockett at all?
It was all Nelson's doing, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I know Cornette had a big input on that one. Cornette, by the way, is probably the most brilliant mind in wrestling today.
Yeah,
still.
No doubt.
He's brilliant. But so Nelson got us up there, and yeah, it was well organized. I mean, they did a good job of putting stuff. I don't remember a whole lot from that time other than just working the matches. They always drew good crowds.
Yeah.
I think I actually worked with Nikita up in Smoky Mountain once.
Very
I
cool.
could be wrong. But.
Yeah. And it shows you work guys like Terry Gordy, and then, of course, my buddy Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony, and even Bob Holly. So I guess, you'd work the Fabulous Freebirds earlier on in your career, Jimmy Garvin and Michael P.S. Hayes and stuff. But how was it working Terry?
Terry got to work in Japan, and he was like a freight train.
Oh,
He was out in Steve Williams, too. They were tagging him there in Japan. It'd be me and Spivey against those two, but it never hurt you. Steve was more stiff than Terry, but I mean, just if you look at him, if you didn't know him, you just think he's this big guy, just kind of out of shape. But he'd run the ropes, he'd be all up and down, and big cardio, and then he was very believable with his punches. I mean, he was just that Texas style wrestling to me, and it worked. I mean, they hated him in Japan, and they love him in the United States.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah. Anyway, big Fabulous Freebirds fans on this show for sure.
Oh, I love Michael Hayes is the best. He's fun.
Another great mind in the business for sure.
So I see this guy in the late 90s became, my favorite guy at the time. But I see in the early 90s you worked DDP in WCW.
Diamond Dallas Page, when he was still a manager. But man, what a humble guy, and just smart, and I'm glad to see him in his break. He's doing really well now in his personal business, yoga and stuff like that. But he was he was a smart manager, and I never got to work him, but just being around him, and he's just one of those people that remembers your name. You see him, hey Tommy, how you doing? He never got full of himself. That whole gimmick. He's just a good dude.
Yeah. Absolutely. He was really cool. And I love the fact that I'm like 6'1", 6'2". And so when I was managing, I unfortunately was sometimes taller than the guys that I was managing. So I always tried to figure out the Gary Hart DDP method of kind of standing off and behind your wrestler so you don't look like Andre the Giant beside them, and DDP to me was one of those guys that was like, he was so determined to become and can you imagine Tommy becoming a worker at 36 years old? Can you imagine? Even though he had managed several years before that, can you imagine actually turning your career into in the ring at 36?
Yeah, my brain would have said, your body's not ready for this, don't do it. But, it worked out well for him. But I think that's why he found yoga, because there's a lot of the problems that, between 4 years in the military and 8 years in wrestling, I've got the VA disability. I'm 100% disabled from the abuse of my body in 12 years of my life. But, he found yoga and natural ways of healing his body. But I guarantee you he hurts worse than I do.
Oh, yeah.
I retired at 31.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, we'll get there in just a minute. We got a little bit to go here. So next, in 92, you started working for Herb Abrams and the UWF. So first off, how was Herb? I mean, we've heard great stories about him, especially from the Dark Side of the Ring episode. How was that, and what was your connection to get into that promotion?
Once again, Nelson and I have a strong recollection dealing with Herb as much because Nelson pretty much did all that, go in and just work and have fun, and I might have been a handful of matches I did there. I don't recall, but any opportunity I had, I mean, it seemed like they did a great production. The television was nice, and they had top talent. But I've heard stories on both sides, but just like anything, you always do.
Yeah, I think they missed out on having the Tommy Angel cookies too. They could have, really done well with those. I'm sure. The Paul Orndorff, though, you got to work Mr. Wonderful there. How was Paul? God,
he was awesome. He's like, to me, in the same class as Ronnie Garvin. He was all business. If you didn't know what you're doing, he'd eat you up. If you knew how to do it, he'd give it to you. He lets you do some stuff. And I had a few TV matches, WCW, where he let me do some stuff. But just the one story that most people probably know is that he got in a fight with Van Vader. He ended the fight. He was in flip flops in his trunks, and he was smarting off, and he basically took him to the ground and was kicking him in the face with his flip flops on.
Oh my gosh! Did you witness that?
I was within earshot of him going, "Stop hanging them off me, please."
Oh my gosh.
See, I've heard differing stories about it before, so that's good to hear.
That's cool. Yeah.
But I mean, the next time I found I was working Paul, I was like, well, I hope he doesn't get all excited on me, but he said, "You're one of Nelson's boys." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "All right, well, we're going to keep this one simple, and we're going to do this and that." And so we went out and came back, and from there, it was kind of a starting point as far as matches with him. So if you had his trust, he would give you some stuff. But that dude was, you remember in his early day, he was buff.
Oh, he was jacked. Yeah. I mean, I gave Lex the props, but he was up there with the body as far as that goes, So one thing I will say about him is, I never thought of it that way that you said, that he's very in a similar working way of Ronnie Garvin, but that makes total sense. I mean, it clicked. One of those light bulbs just went off in my brain there. So it was very cool.
It's one of those intentional with his, the heels or even baby faces are just very, to me, like you said, it's just similar styles.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. That really does.
So in looks like 92 as well, you worked in All Japan. You talked about it some before, tagging with Dan Spivey. Who was your connection there, and can you tell us a little bit about it? Was it Nelson there as well, or?
Nelson's influence, but a couple of guys that were from my camp with Nelson went over there, and Stan Hansen actually, and Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace was working out with us before all that too, so it was kind of a combination of. Yeah, Johnny was already there. He was the blonde baby face, and he was heir apparent to Baba because he was blonde haired and Japanese people loved him. So he's kind of like the assistant booker. But Stan Hansen, who David Isley is still real good friends with, Stan said, "Hey, Dave, you got any more guys from your camp that can come out?" And he said, "Yeah, just ask Johnny." And so I got to go over there in 92. And man, you talk about that's probably the best experience I had in my life.
I was going to ask.
Exceptionally well. Yeah. You're going around to all over the island of Japan and these big venues and Cheap Trick at Budokan. So we wrestled in the Budokan. I was like, "Oh, this is where Cheap Trick played." And you get there, it's like an old gymnasium. Like, this is the Budokan. What the?
Yeah. So, I mean, did you have fun with sponsors? I just got to hear these fun stories. Did you see any of the Yakuza around? I'm just curious about these questions we've always heard.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was all kinds of goofy stuff. Like they took us out to the Playboy Club, and one of their guys was, they didn't speak very much English, but they had the bank, so wherever they took us, we'd go. And it was early on in the evening. This guy grabs my thumb and twists it. He's starting to feel like he's going to break my thumb, so I just hooked him in a fireman's carry, slammed him over my head on the wall, and he fell down, and he was half knocked out. And I was holding my thumb and fell. And I was like, "What the? Who's that?" And they're like, that's the guy. What'd you do, Angel? I'm like, "I almost broke my thumb. Damn it." I thought it was funny. Little guy hooked my thumb, and I just reached down with my right thumb, and I just hooked him under between his legs and just shot him up over my head, and he hit the wall and dropped. He finally let go of my thumb, but I was like, "Ow." Yeah. Dude, don't do that anymore.
What are you supposed to do, man? Let him break your thumb? I mean, seriously.
And we're riding around in the tour bus that we had, and they put all kinds of American movies, and Coming to America was on. Eddie Murphy. That's movie.
Great movie.
That's gorgeous. What is that, velvet? So all them guys they're passing around a bottle of sake with a little viper in the bottom of the bottle.
Right.
So they're like, I was telling them, I used to be in the military. I'll bite snakes' heads off. And they're like, "Well, bite that one off." I'm like, "You get him out of the bottle, I'll bite his head off." And someone smashed the top of it off. They pulled the viper out, bit his head off, spit it out. It's like, "Ah!"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, okay, you brought him up just a second ago, and I got to hear, because you're great at impersonations. I don't know if you know that, but your Dusty is spot on. You've got some great ones throughout the show. But can you do a Johnny Ace impersonation?
Yeah, I don't think so. To me, this Johnny Ace.
I just know he kind of talks like this, but.
Well, he had somebody messed up his throat. I wanted to
now I feel bad. Gotcha.
I don't know, it was the elbow or the throat or something, because I didn't notice until I saw him. He came to Greenville, and I've been in the beer business down here, and I called him and said, "Hey, I got a bunch of people I work with that we got a suite down there. You think we can work out meeting some of the guys or something?" He goes, "No, I don't know. We'll see." But he came up to the suite, and they knew who he was, and talked to him. He's like, "Tom Raspy." I'm like, "I So you got a call. He goes, "Oh, brother, man, last time I was working, man, Doc got me with the elbow in the throat or something." I was like, "Dang!" So he like crushed his larynx or something.
Wow.
So something like that. But I was like, "Man, that's awful," because he talked normal. So if you wanted me to do the raspy Johnny's, my brother's Joe. You know him.
I feel bad now, man. That's I never heard that story. That's interesting. So I got to hear about, how was it tagging and basically working with Dan Spivey so closely? He's so respected by everyone.
Oh yeah, he's a very quiet guy. So it wasn't like we were like best buds, but we knew the finish. But he was over in Japan. You go out in Japan and like Stan Hansen was like the most over. You get when you walk into those big arenas. They throw streamers down, and you just see streamers falling. The more streamers, the more over you are.
Yeah.
And so Dan would always, we'd walk as a tag team, go out there, and there'd be a lot of streamers. I'm thinking, okay, maybe a couple's for me. I don't know. I go out by myself and nothing. So I finally had one match where I got some streamers. Oh, it was cool, but he is over. He's big, and you would think as big as he is, but he can move, he can jump, he can execute, all kinds of moves. And we worked a lot with tag teams. There were Doug Furness. Yep, exactly. Yep.
And Philip LaFawn. Yeah.
Yep. Bobby and the Fantastics.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to my question. So one of the questions I have is, if you had to pick, and I'm talking about the Rock and Roll Express, and I know they're different matches. You have the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, the Fantastics, or the British Bulldogs. If you're picking one of those teams to wrestle for the rest of your career, who would it be?
Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're all those guys are all exceptional athletes. But to me, the Fantastics were with Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton.
Oh yeah.
They were all kinds of great moves, and they were easy to work with. Obviously, the Midnight Express as well, the Bulldogs. But as far as the night off, it'd be the Rock and Roll Express, because it's a cakewalk.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Taking anything for anybody?
No, none of that for sure. So January 3rd, 94 and January 12th of 94, from my research and your match listing, it shows that on the 3rd, you actually wrestled your last match for WCW, and that was against Ron Simmons. And then on the 12th, it looks like, and I could be wrong, so please correct me if I am, but you wrestled your last match for the WWF, and that was against Diesel. Is that around the time you started wrapping things up?
Yeah, because then after that, I can't remember who booked it, but I went down to the Dominican Republic, and it was like a 3 or 4 day trip, and I worked Hacksaw Doug, and I was just miserable. I was just, the country was under martial law, which means the military runs everything. We get all these protocols. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You get arrested. It might be 6 months before you get your first call. So we're already walking around eggshells, and I'm wrestling Hacksaw. He's just an enormous goofball. He's fun. He throws me out of the ring, and I slide across the floor and knock a soldier over, thinking, oh, they're going to shoot me.
Yeah.
I just lay there in bed, and when fans are laughing, I looked up, and the soldier's smiling, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. That was the longest. Jimmy Snuka was on that one, Barbarian, Chief, Lonnie McDaniels, and I don't remember what else, but I just remember the whole time I was there, my father committed suicide in 94, and that was the biggest reason. I already had a heavy heart. And so when I flew back, I called both offices, said, look, you don't need to call me anymore. I'm not going to work. I'm pretty much tapping out. And they said, you sure? And I said, I'm sure. I appreciate the opportunities you give me. And, it's been a lot of fun. You guys have been great for me, but it was very unceremonious, just very underwhelming, but good for me. I just walked away.
Yeah. And so you actually end up working, it was September 17th of 94 at a NWA TV taping. And I guess this is the Frobich era of NWA after Crockett and them and WCW. After NWA left WCW, you actually worked Denny Brown. Was that technically your last match of all time?
I don't remember if the trip to Dominican was before or after that, but yeah, it was right at that time frame, because I remember my birthday was in September, and I was thinking, what a way to go out,
Yeah, Gotcha. Okay. I didn't see anything about the Dominican, but obviously that's what you're here for, to fill in all those blanks, you know. But, you know, I always pivot to Jared for the final question as we're kind of wrapping things up for the show here. This is his technical second favorite question. So go ahead.
So, Tommy, this is going to be, I imagine, a very tough question for you, just because you've had so many matches. If you could, I'm going to give you like 1, 2, or 3 matches, like your favorite matches of all time. Can you give me give us some insight into that?
I couldn't give you specifics on the date and all that stuff.
No,
that's okay. No. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, probably my absolute favorite was Kurt Hennig, WWF. He's Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah.
We had a really good match with that one, big crowd. Bobby even got mad at Kurt afterwards. You gave that kid too much. He goes, dude, how's he supposed to get over?
Yeah.
So he stood up for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I could give you 3 or 4 Barry Windham matches. He was always really good to work with. He was just a consummate professional, but he was about helping develop the next generation. He knew it wasn't all about his ears. As big as he was, to allow someone like myself to do a little bit in the ring with him was very humbling, and I always appreciated him. So there's not one specific match, but several I've had with him, even on TV. That he was always gracious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, you made him part of your Mount Rushmore, but also it stands out once again that they're 2 second-generation stars that, you know, their dads were legends, and then, of course, they become legends themselves. But one thing I noticed about the 2 of those guys, that it doesn't feel like they truly got their props. Now, again, they were great, and everybody thinks of them as 2 of the very best. But I feel like, unlike some of the other guys that did have the runs with the big strap, I think it's kind of sad that neither one of those guys really got a good run with their prospective heavyweight title.
I agree. And that's the biggest question. Every guy that gets out of the business is like, what if, what could have been? And, you know, that's why I have no regrets, because all the guys, Ricky Morton said it, you know, one time in the dressing room, he said, someone asked him who's over. He said, hey, we're all over. Everybody in this room can work.
Yeah,
so it's just a matter of getting that chance, and I don't have any regrets. You know, did I want to be a marquee talent? I believe I could have been, but it didn't happen. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be in conversations with these guys, because, you know, they're the best of the best. So
absolutely,
I Forrest Gump my way into the business. You know, I just a guy in the military that was workout junkie that wanted to get into business, and just the timing was right. I mean, you guys live up in the Mooresville, Charlotte area. The same thing happened. I Forrest Gump my way into radio business. I got into wrestling. I went to a broadcast school right there in Charlotte. Next thing I know, I was working at WRFX, John Boy and Billy. I worked with them for 15 years.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, tell us about that a little bit. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was the biggest thing is when I got out of wrestling, it was a very dark period in my life, and I finally got in a relationship with my dad, and he passed away, and so I was just trying to reinvent myself. I said, you know, I want to do something fun. I don't want a real job. So radio seemed like a great thing. So Carolina School of Broadcasting was, I don't know, a few $1,000s. I said, you know, get a job in radio, and you go through, and they said, we have relationships with all these different stations, TV, radio. We can help you get connected. I said, what's your genre of music? I said, rock. And they said, well, 95.7, the ride was back then. It was something else, but I said, I'm thinking like classic rock, 99.7. Well, we've never had anybody, we had any luck getting in with them. And I was bouncing at my buddy's bar on Independence Boulevard, and then Flock was doing a sponsored a rock show. So I'm working the front doors. I'm still probably like 260 and doing the register, and the guys come in, oh, with the radio station. I said, all right, well, stand over there. I'll get you in a second. You don't understand with the radio station. All right, clowns. Here's some. I'll let you in, but you got to tell me who's the boss here. And then Jeff Kent was the program director. I said, I'm at a radio school down the street. I said, love to get an intern with you guys. You're a big son of a bitch. What makes you think you're going to make it? I said, I believe.
Yeah.
And he gave me a business card, and I called him Monday. He didn't remember me because he got hammered. But I said, hey, I'm the guy that got your business card. I want to get. He said, come on down. We'll talk about an internship, and got an internship. And man, you know, it was 400 hours of free interning, eating Chick-fil-A sandwiches at car remotes, trying to stay alive and bouncing my buddy's bar. But next thing I know, I was the field operations director, then the promotions director, then I was doing on air on the weekends. And I was, even though the John Boy and Billy are a syndicated show, at that time it was like 120 stations. I was still their local promotions director. So you talk about going from, the best year in wrestling to the best year in radio.
Yeah.
I was kind of Forrest Gump my way into that one. So I've just been blessed. But yeah, we had, at one point a $2 million budget for outdoor billboards, TV campaigns. We're giving away homes, trucks, cars, cash, vacation trips. I mean, it was a blast. I didn't have to take any bumps.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Man, and I tell you, you went from working WCW, the Crockett Company, the NWA, you got to work WWF, then you worked John Boy and Billy. I mean, we, as Southern kids, John Boy and Billy was part of our morning trip to school. You know what I mean? So it's hey, buddy, can I borrow $1? What was that saying?
Hey, man, let me buy it.
Yeah. Big man, let me borrow $1. Let me hold $1.
Let me hold $1. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So that's great. So those guys, I mean, and they loved wrestling too, from what I remember. So they always had some. Yeah.
Killers was a writer on the show, a comedy writer, and he's been in several movies. But they didn't really know I wrestled for almost like 8 or 9 years. I didn't talk about it. I just thought it was a dumb job.
Yeah.
And they finally, even after I got out, they started seeing that back then the internet was really full with different podcasts and videos of me wrestling right there. And then they're like, because Jeff Kent was the program director when I was on the air, he sat down and he goes, "Okay, we're going to put you on the air. What do you think would be a cool name?" I said, "Well, I've been on TV for a while around here. It's Tommy Angel." And he looks at me and he goes, "That sounds gay. I don't want to do that." I said, "All right, what do you want to call me?" He goes, "I like Tommy Lee. What do you think about that?" I said, "Hey, you're the boss."
Yeah.
Tommy Lee on the Charlotte's Fox, home of classic rock and roll.
That's awesome.
So afterwards, he finally sees me and goes, "Dude, you never told me." I said, "I did, but you told me I was gay." About it, dude. I'm going to put you over. I'm like, I know. That's what I told you.
Right. Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah. So, Tommy, man, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been a blast. It really has. And, we love to talk to the guys that know where the bodies are buried. And, it's the guys like you that really the business was built upon. And I know that the many guys that have passed on before you, and all the stars, but honestly, the guys, I really don't like saying the word jobber, even though George South's like, "I'm a jobber, it's fine." But and I don't really love enhancement talent either. So I never really know the correct term. Maybe carpenter. How about that? Yeah. But when it comes,
all carpenters ever it all.
Yeah, but to me, I just want to thank you for your not only being on the show, but thank you for your career and thank you for the years of entertainment that you gave my brother and I, and you gave all of our listeners. And we just greatly appreciate you coming by the show and sharing your story with us, man.
Well, thanks, Robbie. I wish you much success with your podcast, and it's always nice to be able to share a little bit of my piece of the business. And
yeah.
We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Part two coming soon, y'all. Just stay tuned. So, well, I tell you what, we'll be right back to wrap things up with the Plastic Sheik on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. Man, Tommy, you're the best, brother. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
It wasn't a waste of your time.
Never.
No.
This is honestly one of our best shows, truly, man. Seriously, and I say that in all seriousness. We really had a great time with you, and there was so much we could cover with you that we kind of had to pick the high spots, But when it comes down to it, part two, we'll figure out part two, and we'll figure it out. But just thank you for doing this for us, man. Greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Okay, thank you.
You guys take care.
Thanks, Tommy. See you now.
This is your rock star ring announcer, Aaron Camaro. I'm a man who believes the two greatest art forms ever created are professional wrestling and heavy rock music. So when I'm not hosting the best parties that also happen to be live professional wrestling shows, I'm hosting the Decibel Geek Podcast. Decibel Geek is a weekly podcast that features discussions of all things rock. We're talking the Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, Kiss, Ozzy, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Alice in Chains, Pantera, and everything in between. Plus, we'll turn you on to new bands from today that have the same spirit and style that the legends do. Decibel Geek is hosted by myself, along with Rockin' Pod founder Chris Sinzak, and each week you'll get interviews with famous musicians and industry insiders, along with informative, entertaining, humorous, and insightful discussions, and most importantly, a passion for the music. So if you love to rock out as much as I do, then this is your invitation to the greatest rock and roll party in all of podcasting. It's Decibel Geek, and it's available right now on all major podcast platforms. Oh yeah!
Oh, Sheik, man, what did we say, right? Tommy Angel, such a great interview, such a great dude, man. Really fun episode.
Fantastic guy, man. I mean, he's top notch and so willing to talk to us and give us stories and talk about all the people, our childhood heroes he wrestled with and everything like that, man. It's nothing better.
You know, and I think of him as one of those guys that wasted zero time, too. You know what I'm saying? First match ever. You know, you're like, normally we ask somebody who their first match was, and they'd be like, well, that was with Johnny Dynamite or whatever, you know, something to that effect.
There were 12 people in the audience.
Yeah, and then most of them were the guys, you know. And so, but he said our first match is with Baron Von Raschke on TV. and then he goes on to wrestle the Rock and Roll Express, and then basically everybody else that you can think of on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. You know, he wasted so little time. He was in the business from 87 to 94, and in that time, he wrestled in WCW, WWF, NWA Jim Crockett, wrestled for All Japan. And then he also had time to wrestle in the independents in North Carolina as well. And I mean, at that time, the independents were still a big thing, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just impressive that all the stuff that he did in that little time, man, is so fun, you know? So
yeah, and it's, you know, you say it, and I've seen the notes of ours, and you know, it covers those times, 87 to 94. It feels like so much longer, though, when you're talking. Like you said, he wasted no time in the business, man. He got it done. He didn't let any grass grow beneath his feet, and he made money while it was there to be made, man.
Yeah, it was impressive, too. And, you know, the funny thing is, I brought it up to Gene, and I was like, you know, we got Tommy Angel coming up. And I was like, you know who that is? Oh, of course I know who Tommy Angel is. And, I mean, it's just true. Everybody knows who Tommy Angel is. And then he goes on to work for John Boy and Billy and do a radio career. And, I mean, like you said, he's been big things. But, I mean, he was a man from the 82nd Airborne. So he had a very great early start. And, honestly, just it shows so much in the stories that he told. And I feel like we honestly probably got pretty deep into his career, but also feel like we somewhat only scratched the surface too. You know what I mean? So
yeah, there's definitely room for more if we ever need it, or if he ever wants to come back on, I guess I should say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, we thank you all so much for listening, and hope you all enjoyed that as much as we did. Tommy, well, you know, we appreciate you coming on the show and just appreciate everything that you shared with us. You know, some things before we go, obviously, always we want to promote some things. One thing, we recently just had Dirty White Boy in a part 2 on the Wolfie D podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D. That was a lot of fun, dude. Tony is a great guy. Such a great, just
Dirty
great
White Boy.
Exactly. I mean, he's just a great guy. And honestly, you know, like I've said it many times before, he was the villain of our childhood. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I feel like I've heard it, and I feel like it always seems to be true that, you know, the the villains in wrestling turn out to be some of the nicest guys. So
totally, exactly. Yeah. That's a true thing, man. It is.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird though to think about that. As much as they can bring out the hate in you when you were kids and adults too. So
yeah. Well, if you haven't listened to that, definitely go check it out on the other podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, part of the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling crew of shows. We definitely appreciate y'all listening to that. Also, one thing I want y'all to do, go right now to YouTube and go on and type in Nashville Wrestling Network and make sure you subscribe to that. That's our good buddy Kroll's YouTube channel. He's actually starting to put a lot more stuff on there, stuff from guys that we've had on all of our shows. And honestly, he's doing a lot of things. I think one video he dropped has already hit like 12,000 views. But anyway, go make sure that you're subscribed to the Nashville Wrestling Network if you're not already. He's going to be doing some cool giveaways. I think for Thanksgiving, they're going to do a live show and it's going to be fun. They're going to have some live wrestling on there. It'll be fun to watch that. You know, if you don't like football, go on YouTube and watch some wrestling for Thanksgiving, you know.
Absolutely, man.
He's going to be giving away gifts, you know, card sets, t-shirts, stickers, all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure you go and subscribe to that, comment on the videos, just give Kroll the love that, you know, he's shared with us as far as helping us out with our podcast. So another thing is always make sure that you're subscribed to the Brian Turner's VHS Rehab channel. He's always putting out great stuff. Unfortunately, recently Brian lost his mom, so we want to send our condolences to him. Definitely hope you're, you know, doing okay, brother, and we're sorry to hear about your mom. And, you know, if you need anything from us, please let us know. We're here for you as always, Brian. Show him some love. If you haven't supported his channel, I think he's got like 6,000 subscribers, so he really doesn't need any help from us. But if you haven't subscribed to his channel, make sure you're subscribed to that too. But most importantly, if you haven't subscribed or followed us at GMBMPW on Facebook group, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that. If you're not following us on there, you got to go do that right now at GMPMPW. You know, that's where you hear about all the shows that are coming up. And brother, Tommy Angel's just the start. We've got some incredible plans coming up that I don't want to spill right now, but we've got some really great things coming down the pipeline. So y'all just get with us, follow us, support us, and we thank you all so much as always for that. Sheik, you got anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Yeah. How about two brothers and my two kids go to a WWE house show this weekend in Johnson City?
What are you talking about, man? Really? Are you playing with me?
Let's go, brother. Let's do it. I've got tickets.
You got tickets already? Oh, yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. Is that like a house show they're doing?
They call it a super show, but I don't know what that means.
I think it means that all the stars come, like the Raw and the SmackDown people convene in one place. And it's at Freedom Hall in Johnson City, where we've seen wrestling before.
Absolutely.
We're fulfilling a legacy here, right?
Yeah.
Plastic Sheik.
Little Sheik's first real wrestling event, really. So
that's awesome. Yes, I will be there. I promise. I'm coming right now.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, man. Well, that sounds good. I don't think there's anything else to leave it with that. So once again, thank y'all so much. For Tommy Angel, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street, I'm Jimmy Street, and this has been Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget.
Just Tommy Angel in the morning, baby.
That's pretty clever.
Old Juice Newton.
Yeah.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life.
This has been a James Rock Street production.